We don't have this happen to us very often, Rob. We have a real live human being person in the studio with us. Normally we use that white thing in front of us. And I'm going to get you to do the intros.
Well, it is exciting because it is election day, and we didn't want to talk about the politics necessarily, but we wanted to talk about what the day means for the poor people that we've already sent out a well done to for slaving away for 6 weeks, probably not sleeping at all, trying to win a position, a person who's
Or to
attempted
support
do that in
someone
the past.
who's trying to win.
Yeah, possibly even do that. Someone who's done both and is definitely a prominent person in Geelong from the famous Fidge family and friend of the show now. Freya Fidge, good morning to you.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Neil.
Very busy time for those in the political world. You've lived it, you've breathed it, you probably had time to understand it, but just to give us an indication, how happy will candidates be at 6 o'clock tonight when they can actually just take a breath?
Relieved would be the word. I think I was actually late to my election night party because I sat on the couch, and once I sat down, it was very hard to get up again.
Yeah, you obviously get very tired to the point where, and I know in your working life you can go along and get to the point of near exhaustion, but with this, you must literally be running on adrenaline.
Absolutely. Yep, and you're up for that whole sort of 10-hour period. You do not stop. And going around the grounds on the day to each of the booths, and there's not nearly as many on a state election that there is on a federal, but it is exhausting. But it is adrenaline, absolutely.
Now there's two things that you've experienced. One is more of a personal campaign of council, where I guess you're relying heavily on family and friends, and then when you're standing, which you have done for the Liberal Party, much more team-oriented, much more support, both financially and feet on the ground. What was the main difference between the two on you personally?
I think the easy part of a council election is that you're doing it with people who are with you for support. It's not a party politic scenario, and I think I don't know. I think Dad and I had great fun. My mum and sisters were overseas at the time, and so we hit the campaign trail and we had
Deliberately.
Yeah, exactly. But we had a great time.
In both situations, you've got a fair bit of base support, because in a political world, obviously, a lot of the community are going to vote Liberal almost regardless of who's there. So you've got a base of support. And of course, with the council, it'd be fair to suggest that the name Jim Fidge behind you, because of his incredible record as a servant of Geelong, again, a good leg up for you to start the campaign.
Yeah, I was actually really pleased with how I went in the council election, being an unknown player. I had always planned to run in 2020, and then it was it 2020? Can't remember. Then it was brought forward, and I came fourth out of the three positions, and I came close fourth, and Peter Murray, he picked me at the post. But I was quite pleased with how that went for my first time in the public arena. And as for the team support around the Liberal Party, that was interesting in Geelong. We're very much a red seat. And whilst we do have a support network in terms of your campaign team, finding people on the ground is challenging.
Mm.
Yep. So it's much easier to find people who are prepared to support you as an independent because they're not showing their party politics than asking people, regardless of whether they do vote in that way or not, to actually put their hand to it.
I guess the other thing that crosses my mind is, your background is you work in a corporate role. You go to work in the morning and you come home at night and you bring your work home. And suddenly, every corner you turn, your face is on a poster, and you're suddenly out there. You are no longer. And I guess it's a bit, not so much for us because we've got no profile at all, but people who go onto TV and, suddenly you're a capital F Freya Fidge, aren't you? Not just another person in the public. Yeah,
pretty confronting looking at yourself all around town. Less so in the council one because it was just less overt. But having your face on every second, corner is pretty confronting. I think little Alfie would love it. My nephew, because he likes seeing all of that. But it's interesting. And I remember making the decision to run. It was probably a bit easier, given that I'd run in the local government campaign. But that decision to run was hard. And you talk about work and having to get approval from work, approval from your family. That's also another big one. And they were really supportive. So it made that work-life balance a lot easier, having a supportive company. I think they were quietly impressed to know that they had a candidate, to be honest.
It's an obvious question for me, Freya. You've grown up in a household and your dad's the mayor of Geelong. You've got a lot of friends socially who have been in politics, so you understand what it's like. Why would you want to do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I suppose I reflect on part of the Leaders for Geelong program I did when they talked about why do you do what you do, and particularly from an HR perspective. And it was actually Jem Fuller that helped me articulate what it was, why I do what I do, and it was around the social conscience. And so being an HR practitioner, it's social conscience of the business as opposed to, the corporate. So I guess it's a similar type of thing. So why would you? And it's to make a difference, and it's to be a voice. And I think as a party member that can be challenging because you do have a party line. And I think I was probably lucky in the sense that I had Darren Lyons in the same running at the same time, because a lot of the I suppose pressure that comes with being a candidate was I was able to deflect, I suppose. But I think you do it because if you try and balance it, well, why not? So if you can't answer the why not, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and obviously, I was having a chat to someone yesterday, a young person, 21-year-old, and we were talking through, the people that are there to vote for, and I don't like him, and she's no good, and they're all in it for themselves, and clearly every single person who goes in is going in there, you would think, to make a difference in the way that they think is the right way to make a difference. And I think that's lost often, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I don't think anyone goes in it for themselves as such. I think it is, I think that probably the affiliation to a party is where you're, I suppose that's the internal sort of piece. But then again, you're not really doing it for the party, because if you were, it's more of the principle of the party rather than the policy of the party. And they're quite, if you try and get them both to the middle, they're pretty close, to be honest. But you're not going in there because you're self-preservation or anything like that. That's for sure.
Or career options.
Or career options.
Career security.
That's a good segue to where I was going to go next, and that is the difference between being Freya Fidge candidate for the council. You've got your own personal passions, your own personal line. You can really stick to it, and you, as I know, you're a pretty rock solid sort of character. But in the party politics, there may be things that the Liberal Party are putting forward an election campaign that you don't necessarily believe is right for your town, your Geelong. How did you balance that?
I think being state, I was pretty fortunate because Geelong is, the second city. So I remember Matthew Guy running the 3220 sort of campaign that he wanted to lift around building the profile for Geelong. So there was enough in the party political system that Geelong was heard. I don't recall any of their policies that I strongly disagreed with, but also I wasn't really a party candidate. I'd say I was probably more around Freya Fidge for Geelong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that too is once again, knowing you pretty well, there's a reasonable depth to your skin, but with the praise and support from those around you, there's also, as Neil touched on before, people might say, well, I don't like her. It might be because they didn't like your father or something stupid, but there's going to be criticism, and there could even be abuse at times. So how was that part of it on campaigning time? Honestly,
I don't recall having that much negative. If it was negative, it was around the Liberal Party as opposed to personal. Now, maybe I've got a a selective memory of what I want to remember and what I don't.
As distinct from blokes of our age who've got no memory.
But I don't think, and as I said, like Darren copped a fair bit in the campaign, definitely, but Christine's not a nasty person either. So we were sort of lucky.
As a Christine Cousins?
Yes, yeah. So we were lucky in that sense that it wasn't I didn't find it an offensive or a really combative process. I even just being out at Grovedale today, everyone's talking to each other. There's no adversity, if you like. It's just everyone is there to do what they need to do to help their candidate. And I think it's a nice place to be. Whereas sometimes you talk to people and they go, "Oh, they'll be terrible to you," they'll be, and it's just not like that.
There's certainly been some ugly scenes in other parts of the country this week, or over the last fortnight, no doubt. But I'm really pleased to hear that coming back from a local polling booth, because I voted already in Geelong, and I really was taken by it. It was not how joyous the occasion was, but people were there doing their thing, and there was great respect for them, both from the voters and the other people handing out pamphlets. It looked almost like an occasion as opposed to a dogfight.
Yeah, and it is. And, people, you buy each other a coffee, or, if someone needs to go to the loo, you say, "I'll hold you." Maybe I won't hold the red ones, but, we sort of were joking with the Greens, and I said, "Oh, if they take yours, just put Darcy second." So we might do things like that, but it's all in jest, and there's no...
As it should be, and it used to be when I was young. Polling day was a lot of fun, and you had your values and you're holding your colour, but at the end of the day, it's just like going to the footy and you're supporting your team.
That's exactly the analogy I was going to use.
Yeah.
That you go to a grand final, which is effectively what today is for a lot of people, and you're wearing your jumper. And I can remember really clearly the 2002 grand final. We had a bunch of Collingwood supporters sitting in front of us as a Brisbane Lions supporter, hurling abuse. We were hurling abuse at the gap. Then they all turned around, shook our hand, and said, "Well done, you guys were better on the day." And you think that's what it's all about. Yeah, we've each got our own passions, but at the end of the day, we're all people who are doing what we love.
Yeah,
and hopefully we can continue that. I think in Geelong that's still the case. I haven't seen too much animosity about it, and we've got to be proud of our city for that. You've had a bit of a taste of it. You had a bit of a rest. What's the future look like? Are you thinking that it might be something you have a crack again at some other stage?
It's a very interesting question, Rob. I suppose you never say never is what I would say to that, and it's probably the same thing I said at the end of the campaign last time. I often say you meet some great people and you meet some doozies as well.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting experience. Whether I would do it again would depend. It is a career change, so it's a career choice. Whether I would do that again would depend on where I am in my own personal career, I suppose. And
once again, you haven't got any less passion for the town that you love, and that's the important thing. Is if something pops up in the future and say, well, can I help? Can I make a difference to my community? Yeah,
and I think the only thing that's holding me back at the moment is the fact that I don't spend enough time in Geelong, which is hard. Because Geelong is a great place, and mind you, Western Victoria is as well. So it's sort of a little bit torn, but. Having more time to be home would be something that I would hope for, and therefore could throw myself into it if I chose to.
And that's quite ironic, isn't it? How Geelong's always been synonymous with the Western District, going back to the days of the wool producers. Everyone gravitated to Geelong.
To the pivot city, Rob.
To the pivot city, yes, very much so, and it's always been part of it. But now, of course, politically, the seat of Wannon now runs from the South Australian border literally to the edge of Geelong. So it's coming our way almost. So a subtle change of direction, and you could actually represent Western Victoria.
I think Dan will do a pretty good job.
So we've got people listening to this, and it's so refreshing to talk to someone about the process and about rather than having someone shoving policies down your throat if you have those conversations.
Yeah.
So someone's listening today and says, you know what, I've always thought it'd be great to be in politics. I want to represent my region, whether that's as an independent or one of the parties. How far out do you start thinking about, like, when the Olympics are done? We already know the 2032 Olympics is going to be in Brisbane, and the 2036 one's not far behind it. How far out do you go, there'll be another election? I could do some maths here. What are we in 2030? There'll be an election in 2031. therefore I should be planning. How far out do people start thinking about doing it, do you reckon?
I think they should start doing it a lot sooner than what I did. I was approached and asked to run, and one of the things that if you're approached, I'm a believer of I don't love the can't even remember what it's called when you're up against the other candidates of your own party. I feel that if pre-selection, if you've been approached, then you've been asked to do it. So I don't think you need to go and fight within your own ranks. But I would say back to the council with my plan. I was planning to do the Leaders for Geelong program, and I was planning to do that before I ran for council, and it all happened back to front. So the council election was called, and I guess at that time the HR background for me was around how do you actually create some respect in the council, given what the council had been through. And so the decision was almost made for me. And then I went and did the Leaders for Geelong program in 18-19. And unfortunately I was running at the same time in 2018. So that was too short. I think you need to be thinking about it at the time of the election, ready for the next one. But also I think in saying that, how you get involved if it's party politics, how you get involved in the party early on is also, I think, also quite important, because you can find your people in that party that you can relate to, and you can understand why they do what they do, and without being too, you can find a lot more of your balanced people as well as you.
Because my daughter went to school with someone who is currently in state parliament, and from an early age, that person, like in year 8, year 9, was always going to be in politics. Now, it helped that her dad was in politics and had represented the same party, and, that was part of the family sort of thing. But, there will be people who are going through high school at the moment who are thinking, I really want to go down that path. There'll be other people who are, Rob's age, who've never had a crack at it, but would say, I might stand as an independent or something like that. So I guess there's no real formula, is there?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. And I think the only thing would be for people in sort of high school is the watch out is that you don't end up being a career politician, like going through whether it's the unions or a
think tank or
an office of a politician, because you actually don't know enough about the corporate world or small business even. So I think there's life experience that comes along with a good politician.
I'll deal with the elephant in the room. Freya, your preferred political party is the Liberal Party, who have been criticised for their women thing. You've fought that. You're a strong female in the party. Did that ever sort of sit in the back of your mind? Was it something that subconsciously you're worried about how you might be treated, or have you always found the party balanced in that area?
Look, I probably am not quite qualified to comment, because I was lucky. I was in Geelong and I had a team of people behind me. But I don't know. I work in HR, so diversity to me is not just gender-based. So I think the diversity component to any person that runs is about merit, and it's about getting the balance of what you need to represent. So I'm probably, coming from a family of 4 girls, might be in the minority of what I think. But I think you're strong in your own person to be what you want to be, and I don't think anyone should be subject to any sort of bullying or intimidation. So it's about the resilience that you can face into that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to ask you, are you a merit or a quota person? My view is merit should certainly be prominent, but also very strong of the belief that we live in a society, and all my life I've been told, men and women are different, and there's 50% of each. So in a decision-based process, my belief is it should be 50-50, but not everyone agrees with that, and merit's very much at the forefront. You've always been able to probably be there on the merit stakes anyway because of your career with what you've done, but there's still that important, when it comes to the line, how are we assessed? And the Liberal Party clearly have a stronger male component to female.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to then who you are as a spokesperson. Regardless of what your gender is, you're there to listen, and you're there to represent. And that was one thing I often found. If an opposition would treat me differently because I was the Liberal candidate. And I remember at one point saying to someone, well, actually, I'm in your electorate. You're here to represent me. So regardless of my politics, you're here to represent me. And it was an interesting, it was sort of one of the younger guys who probably had come through the office. And, yeah, it was, whereas the actual politician got it. So it's interesting that, everyone's got their preferences and don't always have to agree.
Yeah, that's true. That's why we have a thing called democracy, and it works pretty darn well in our country. And I'm seeing it at risk elsewhere, but we are a pretty privileged country the way we have it. And you've gone through the opportunity to represent your community. Australia looks like about the best place and the best way to do democracy. Do you still feel that?
I hope so.
Yep.
Would be my response to that. I think there's a bit of back to basics we need to get to, and getting back to the core of why we're here and why we are the lucky country. But we can do that respectfully.
Yep, definitely. Money in politics, that's the other thing. A lot of people sort of somewhat, even within a party situation, if you were going to be in a party where your money providers didn't think you had much chance, you'd probably have to maybe fund a lot of your own. If you're running a campaign for a council, clearly you've got to fund it all yourself. How much pressure does that put on limiting potentially good people being able to get into a position of representation, because money's now become such a huge part of
money's
running a campaign?
Too tight to mention, Rob.
It is too
apparently.
tight to mention. Yeah. It sort of makes a bit of a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we had our fundraisers for Geelong, and I guess one of the challenges you have with fundraising is if it all goes into the central pool. Is being able to spend your money that you've raised, and that was a challenge I had around getting access to the funds we'd raised. So you do learn a lot through the process, but that's just because you're dealing with headquarters, and they're just the machine that don't really think about the people on the other end at times.
Well, as you're driving around Geelong at the moment, you wouldn't need to be Einstein to figure out that the parties have spent money a bit differently in Corio and Corangamite. The boundary's right through the middle of Geelong, but there's clearly a bit more money spent. Both look at the number of red and blue signs depending on where it is, and both the majors are guilty of that, and certainly even in the case with some of the other parties as well. When they think they're a better chance, you'll see a lot more exposure to that party spending, without doubt.
Yeah, I must admit I don't think I've seen much at all in Corio from either colour.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, and actually I would say maybe it's just because my eye goes towards the blue, but I'm seeing a lot of the blue around Corangamite or Bellarine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So if you were just doing a quick drive around, you would say, "Ooh, that team spent a little bit more money this side of the fence than they have on the other side." Yeah. And that's pretty obvious.
Yep.
We need to let you go because you're doing things on a busy day. So good to catch up. I haven't seen you for a while. It's nice to see you across the other side of the desk, and to help us out with something that's really important. I'm going to put you on the spot, though. At 10 o'clock tonight, who's won, Collingwood or Geelong?
Oh, my gosh.
She didn't even realise they were playing.
Yeah, no, I did, because I knew I couldn't get up there.
And I just looked at the fear in your eyes when I said, who's going to be winning by 10 o'clock tonight, Collingwood or Geelong?
Well, I was thinking about you saying that the Collingwood people turned around and shook your hand. I'm like, really? What game are you at?
Hey, excuse me, my nephew plays for Collingwood.
Oh, congratulations to him. I hope Geelong.
Yeah, okay.
So,
not as much as I do, because if we win, we go to the top. That's okay. It's all good.
I hope too, Freya, but it's a not as strong hope.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'll be hopefully at the at election night, and I don't know. We might get a double whammy. We don't know. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Freya Fidge, thanks for taking some time out of what is a very, very busy day for you, and for this little present you brought in.
I really appreciate that.
That's outstanding. Let's talk again another time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Freya. Best wishes.